The world is a global village.
And that's because information travels beyond boundaries.
And on This Morning on ITV,
we guarantee unbiased analysis on topical issues
that will educate you,
entertain you.
So join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Every Sunday to Thursday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on your ultimate news and current affairs program on television. This Morning on ITV, TMR. Join us.
All right, thank you for joining me at this time. Hope you enjoyed that musical piece. I think we're also put our first discussion on the road this morning. Some days ago, exactly 4 days ago, Nigeria turned 57. Now, it's a long way coming from 1960 till date, talking about anniversary of our independence. And in that time, it's been a whole lot of, dramatic twists and turns. There's been good times, there's been, really tearful moments, moments when we all cried, and there's been moments when we felt like, okay, we can't do it again. There's also been moments in the midst of those moments when we felt like we couldn't do it again, reasons to just stay together and keep being one indivisible entity. And the current administration, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, has emphasized over and over and over again that the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable. Even if a whole lot of people have, problems with, that word, non-negotiable, because some persons think you can't force people against their will. But then, it's the stance of this administration. Nigeria must stay together at all costs. And I think, unity is the way. Unity is the way. Through the independence celebration, I heard very prominent Nigerians say things about Nigeria, and the key word was play up the things that unite us and downplay, the issues that divide us. But another question is, if things work the way they're supposed to work, if everything is the way it's supposed to be, would there be a clamor for division? We turned 57, 5 days gone already, because today's over already. So 5 days gone, we're left with 360 days in our 57 years as a country, just before we turn 58. What should be our focus, for the next 360 days? What should we be looking at? What's next for Nigeria? What should we be talking about? What should we be working on? That's, what we'll be looking at this morning on TMI. Joining me to do justice to this is a member of the academic environment. He's a lecturer and a public affairs analyst, Neville Obahedu. Many thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, viewers at home.
And a happy independence anniversary.
I wish Nigeria happy independence.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's just get straight to this issue right now. 57. The past 1 year has been interesting. There's been, successes recorded. There's been, also tough times for us as a country. The past 1 year also saw us go through one of the worst recessions ever in the history of Nigeria. And within that 1 year, we were able to come out of it. So, what's your take? What should we be looking at right now as a country? What should be the future for us? What should be the dream?
The future for a country of diversities like Nigeria is number one, leadership with vision. Number two, the elite should know that in the interest of the nation, that their clamoring must remain one and indivisible, should be paramount in terms of delivery of goods and services, dividends of good governance. And the elite too should stop playing politics of hate, politics of ethnicity, and politics of religion. If we do this, and then implement what we call the federal state that we are practicing, you will see that the problems that we are seeing, or that we have seen in the last 1 year, pressure on the Nigeria state to restructure and maybe even disintegrate, will be removed completely or will be reduced to the barest minimum.
Okay, you mentioned the issue of quality leadership. Are you saying that between 1960 and now, and in the past 1 year of our nationhood, we've not had quality leadership?
Well, Quality leadership now will be dependent on who is defining quality.
Okay, so let's take it from your definition. Now.
Yes.
What's your stance? As in
By
what's
my own
quality?
definition, we have not had quality leadership.
Okay. You want to define quality leadership
Yes.
from your own point, just
Yes.
so our viewers can follow.
When you say quality leadership, a quality leadership or qualitative leadership is a leadership that does not pride itself in its own way of doing things. That is to say, the way I want it to be done is the way it should be done, to help with the citizens. Quality leadership is a kind of leadership where the leader is like a servant to the people, even though he's master, but it's a servant to the people. It's not a kind of leadership that goes with repression, that goes with corruption, that goes with all kinds of negativities that will bring tragedy upon the nation. This put together is the kind of leadership that we have had from 1960 till now. The only few times that we almost having qualitative leadership was during the period of Muritala Mohammed and the late Yaradua. If you look at what we mean by quality leadership and the characteristics of the administration.
Okay.
Now, talking about Nigeria at 57 and looking at it from independence. If you look at the pre-independence politics between the three important personalities in Nigeria that we have on 200 naira note, 100 naira note, and 500 naira note, I'm referring to Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Ahmadu Bello.
Okay.
You will discover that while some of them were clamoring for a federal system of government, where the federative unit will be independent and coordinate, where the fears of the minorities will be catered for, where inequality will be reduced to the barest minimum because of a centralized government. Others were clamoring for regional government, religion-based government, and so on. And at the end of the day, when Nigeria acquired independence on the basis of ethnic politics, regional politics, southeast politics, western politics, and northern politics, it was an attempt to reduce the powers of Awolowo as a western leader that made the government of Nigeria at that time under NPC, NCNC coalition to create Midwestern state, which is now Edo and Delta state. So the state was not created for the purpose of bringing good governance and dividends of good governance to the people. It was created to reduce the powers and influence of Awolowo. And so Western Nigeria that was maybe not up to 1/4 of the northern part of the country was divided. The southeast was not divided. The northern part of Nigeria, which were put together bigger than the whole south, was not divided. So the creation of Midwestern state was not on the basis of the yearnings and aspirations of the people.
Okay. So you're saying there's been a whole lot of selfish interest.
Yes, selfish
between
interest,
1960
parochial interest. From
and
that time,
today.
then we had the military government, where some young army officers like Kaduna Ozegu, Ade Moyega, and others decided that the way the Nigerian politicians were driving the affairs of the country, they were not leading the country well. So they decided to stage a coup. In the course of the coup, some northern elements were eliminated, like the man we have on 5 Naira, Tafawa Balewa, who was prime minister, who was actually representing the interests of Ahmadu Bello in the federal government, was assassinated. Ahmadu Bello himself, premier of northern Nigeria, was assassinated. Our own Okotibo from Delta State, then Midwestern State, was assassinated. And then Western leader, Awolowo, who was in prison, was not assassinated. Nnamdi Azikiwe from the east was not assassinated. So the northern elements in the army saw that coup as an Igbo coup, as a Satan coup. And so they staged a coup to also overthrow the government of Aguiyi that emerged.
Okay.
From there till now, issue of ethnic politics, religion-based politics has been one of the problems.
That's how we got to this point.
Yes.
But I'm also sure between 1960 and 2017, we've also had, great times, because from the way you're going, it feels like, there's never been a time when we got it right.
Yes. We have not gotten it right.
But there's definitely been a time when we got it right. There's been a time when, we had, really good things going on for us.
For example, when Muritala Mohammed was made head of state after the coup that overthrew General Yakubu Gowon. For the first time, there was a constitution that was put in place, 1979 constitution. And that constitution, for the first time, made the local government to be a third tier of government. That is, we now have federal government, we have state government, we now have local government across the country, using the same standard of leadership. Before then, each region had their own native authority and their own local government administration system. So that first step was the first step to actually make Nigeria a federal state. But the government was overthrown. When the government of Muritala Mohammed was overthrown, history has it that Obasanjo, who was the chief of staff supreme headquarters, was not willing to become the head of state out of fear that he will also be assassinated. And so people like General Tiwa Danjuma, Shehu Yaradua, and some other notable elements in the army decided that they were going to support him to succeed. So that is still the relationship that is existing between them to date. You saw that Obasanjo, when he became a civilian head of state, as he was about to leave, he gave power to Yaradua. If Shehu Yaradua were to be alive, he would have given Shehu Yaradua instead of Umaru Yaradua.
Well, you can't tell for sure.
No, a lot has been written about that. If you look at the articles that have been written by Adekoye.
We understand that there's a relationship, but you can't tell for sure where Pat would have gone. So let's not look like we're trying to preempt stuff right now. But let's get back to the aim for today. What's next? What should we be focusing on? You've mentioned quality leadership. Yeah. You've also mentioned true federalism. I'm sure you want to break down the issue of true federalism some more.
When you say true federalism, we have countries in the world that practice a federal system of government.
Would the clamor for restructuring mean true federalism?
Well, different regions, like South-South or South-East and South-West, North-Central, North-East, and so on, they are all meeting to come up with their own idea of what they mean by restructuring. But if you say Nigeria is a federal system of government, the first form of restructure to be carried out is restructuring the system to actually reflect what we call federal system of government, where each state, each region will control their own God-given resources, and they pay a percentage to the federal government as royalties. That is what is obtainable elsewhere in the world, and that is what people from South-South or Southern Nigeria call true federalism, fiscal federalism, where you will control your resources, and then the attention of the federal government will not be reduced because people will not be willing to go there because the resources are not there to go and control.
Okay.
Now, if we say that we want to restructure, that is where we start restructuring from. Then before we now come and be talking of problem of security and insecurity, problem of youth, problem of corruption, and the rest of them.
Okay.
So if somebody is talking about restructuring, and that restructuring is not hinged on practicing true federalism, that restructuring is prolonging the problems of Nigeria ahead of time.
Restructuring should focus more on bringing about true federalism.
Yes, sir.
Where federating units have power.
Yes.
And able to control resources. Okay, you can be a part of the discussion this morning. If you're watching from whatever part of the world, we would love to hear from you this morning. What do you think should be next to Nigeria as we've turned 57? What should we be dreaming of for the next 360 days? We already spent 5 days out of the 1 year ahead of us, so 360 days. What should be next to us as a country? What should we focus our energy on? What should we focus our strength on? What should be the policy direction for the next 1 year for Nigeria? That's what we're asking this morning on TMI. Share your thoughts with us. The phone line's open already, 052-290-573. Once again, 052-290-573. Join us via SMS and via WhatsApp also. We'd love to read from you. Send your messages to 0811-929-2688. Once again, 0811-929-2688. You could also join us on Twitter via Twitter handle at ITV Radio NG. Do remember to use the hashtag TMI when you tweet. We want to hear from you this morning. If you're watching from outside of Nigeria and every other part of the world, do remember to include the international dial code when you try to reach us via any of the numbers, +234 052290573. SMS and WhatsApp +234 811 929 2688. Okay, let's come back. Apart from, true federalism, what else do you think we should be looking at for the next 1 year?
The next thing we should be looking at the next 1 year is capacity enhancement of the Nigerian state. When we say capacity enhancement of the Nigerian state, we are saying that the Nigerian state as it is presently is a weak state. It's a state that has failed in its responsibility. For example, let's take the issue of security. Because the state has as one of its attributes the monopoly of violence. That is to say, that it is the state alone that is empowered. For example, if people are protesting to the extent that their protest is now a threat to the existence of the entire society, the state can be repressive, can move swiftly with soldiers and police to quell that protest if it is a violent one, or an insurrection, like what happened during the Biafra Nigeria Civil War. Then, the state should also be able to compel obedience from citizens. But if you look at the Nigerian state...
Do you compel obedience, or you do things that bring about obedience?
What I mean by
when you say compel, it feels like force people to be obedient. And I think when you use force, there's always, that possibility of, a repel.
Okay, let me explain what I mean by compel obedience.
Okay.
Because it is an attribute, it's an essential ingredient of the state. A state,
I think
a state that cannot compel.
I think you earn it. You don't force people.
No,
to
that is
obedient.
when you are talking of any. It's like you are talking about any respect before elders or any respect before you.
No, the thing is, I think
a
generally,
state,
if you do what you're supposed to do,
yes,
it would only be normal for people to be loyal and obedient. Take for instance, not like I'm trying to compare right now, but you notice how the citizens of the United States of America are loyal to the government, no matter how much a huge chunk of the population don't favor the Donald Trump administration, but they're still very loyal to him. You'd hardly see people say things against the state. They're obedient to rules and regulations, constitution, laid down constitution and all of that.
Yes.
The UK, you have the same thing. Canada and France, you have the same thing. So I don't think you have to force people or compel people to be obedient.
If you look at it from that angle, I will disagree with you. Why will I disagree with you? The reason is because there is a fundamental difference between government of the day and the state.
Okay.
The state is an institution
All right.
that outlives government. Government will come and go.
Sure.
Like before Donald Trump became president, there was a government, a democratic government in America before the Republican came.
Okay.
The American people, they do not see, they see the state as a state that is alive to its responsibility in terms of even bringing the government to under check in case the government is trying to. There are institutions of the state that can limit the powers and actions of the president.
And that builds confidence.
Yes,
So
and that is as a result.
obedience would come.
That is as a result of the institutionalization of the state. Because I started by telling you that the Nigeria state as presently constituted is a weak state. It's a state that cannot deliver on its essential elements of statehood.
Okay.
And so we now have all the problems that are wrong with the state. Like I started by saying insecurity, and I said that the state is supposed to compel obedience. For example, government of Edo State is saying people should not trade on walkways. People should not trade on walkways. If people trade on walkways, the government will now compel people not to trade on walkways.
Okay.
How are they going to do that? They visit the law that prohibits selling on walkways. And the law is saying that a mobile court can be established, and then the violators of the law can be tried and punished. They can be fined, and they can be remanded in prison. That is compelling obedience. Arresting, trying, and sentencing will serve as a deterrent to others who will go back and trade on walkway. That is compelling obedience, compelling people to obey.
Okay.
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Now, that does not mean that if people, citizens of a state, are dissatisfied with the actions of the government in power, they do not have, in a democratic setting, citizens of a state are supposed to have what we call freedom of expression. they can challenge the government.
Okay.
On the intellectual plane, they can say, government, let us do what we call peer review. Let's look at government in America. Let's look at government in Rwanda. Let's look at government in Indonesia. Let's look at government in Ecuador or Slovenia or any part of the world, and look at what we are doing here. You say you are practicing democracy here. Look at democracy elsewhere. The features of democracy that we see here: multipartism, tolerant of the opposition, free and fair election, impartial umpire, and the rest of them. They are there in America, but they are lacking here. People can challenge the government and set agenda for government.
Okay.
But if you do that in Nigeria here, and they see that you are vehement about it, to the extent that you are so passionate, if DSS, if they are watching you and they feel that statement that you are making, they are threatening the state, they can say it's hate speech that you are making, get you arrested and keep you in prison, incommunicado. Police can do the same thing.
But there's a huge difference between hate speech and, you know, real agitation for reality.
Okay, let me come like this.
When you incite people against the state, that's a different thing from saying this is what should be done. This is what the rights of the people should be, and people should get it. We're seeing civil rights, human rights activists push for issues, and they don't get arrested. And then we've also seen people trying to incite people against the state, and you know it's felony, so they're going for it.
Well,
that's the difference.
That is another topic for another day. But let me just say that from 1960 till now, persons who have engaged the government in terms of delivering the dividends of good governance, a government that is repressive, a government that is intolerant of opposition. We have history of such persons, civil rights activists, who have been handed into prison and kept there for long.
Are you saying 1960 till now, that every government we've had has been a repressive government?
No, I did not say so. It will not be right for me to say so.
Okay.
I'm just saying that between that time and now, we have in between certain governments who were in power and they did not take it easy with opposition. They could arrest, they could even bomb their houses or property, they could even kill. We have even journalists that were arrested and taken away till today, like Bagauda Kato. Nobody heard about them till now. So that is by the way. What led us to that is the issue of the Nigerian state at 57. And what is the state going to look like in the next 365 or 66 days?
360 days.
Now, the Nigerian state should take a cue from other states. We have states like Japan. Nigeria fought civil war in 1960. Japan fought a world war, was traumatized by the dropping of a atomic bomb by the America-led coalition, which is still having effect on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, another part of Japan to date. And yet, after 1945, Japan emerged as the most technologically advanced nation of the world. If you Google Japan now, I'm not sure if they have iron ore deposit. It will be up to what we have at Itakpe or at Ajakuta or even at Oshogbo in Osun State.
Yeah.
But check and see the kind of vehicles and other iron products from Japan. How is Japan getting all these things? You see people very close to ITV here. You have a place they buy condemned iron, scrap iron, and the rest of them. They are on their way to Asia. Either they are on their way to South Korea, they are on their way to Japan, and they will come back here as finished products. They will refine them and bring them here. Nigerian leaders who are the managers of the state, like a business, should take a cue from Japan, take a cue from South Korea, take a cue from China. From 1940-90, when Chairman Mao Zedong, the man who built the modern-day China, when he was alive, China was like a pariah state, was secluded, was like an excluded state from the Committee of Nations because of communism. Only China and Russia were related with Cuba, and then Romania and some other countries that were the islands. But today, even America, that was arch enemy of China, is making China to be a destination for businesses and other technological activities.
Okay.
Nigeria should take a cue from China. here in Nigeria, our leaders were sending money to assist African National Congress. Then, as an opposition and a banished party from South Africa, they were operating from Lusaka, Zambia. Nelson Mandela was put in prison. Oliver Tambo and others were outside the country, meeting with African leaders and other world leaders on how to bring majority rule and democratic governance to South Africa. As we speak now, South Africa is the leading economy in Nigeria, in Africa. Nigeria is second, even though our leaders will say Nigeria is the leading economy. And yet we say we are giant of Africa. Giant of Africa by mouth and by population that is not qualitative, but quantitative. Now, Nigeria should take a cue from South Africa.
Okay.
In the next 365 days or in the next 57 years, if Nigeria is going to remain as one country in the next 57 years, they should take a cue from these countries. Rwanda in 1994. Rwanda is a landlocked country in Africa here. In 1994, the Rwanda fought a second civil war, and about 1 million people died. Most of them Tutsis and
Hutus.
moderate Hutus. That is Hutus that have either a Tutsi parentage, either mother or father. That is, they were not complete Hutus. They were killed. After the war, there was a national government that was put in place. The government was headed by Pastor Bizimungu, and Paul Kagame, who was a rebel leader in Uganda, was now made the vice president. I don't know the politics that took place between Pastor Bizimungu and Paul Kagame. The president had to resign for Paul Kagame to be president. Since that time till now, he is president of Rwanda. As we are speaking now, Rwanda is like the Dubai of Africa, courtesy of the leadership provided by Rwanda, government under Paul Kagame. As we speak now, the government of Rwanda under Paul Kagame established what we call post-conflict state reconstruction. All aspects of the Rwanda state that have to do with conflict resolution, for example, is set up what we call the Gacaca judicial system. It's a system of justice that will not make you to go to court. You just organize the community like Oluku and some other neighbor could say, if you know you have been offended by the state, by persons here, let's come and resolve the matter here. They will just come resolve the matter, apportion blame. If there's a compensation to be done, they will do it. That is how Rwanda. I have been doing a research on Rwanda. And some of the Rwandans that have come across, they are saying that Rwandans fear the law. They respect the law. And they give credit and kudos to Paul Kagame as their president. Nigeria should take a cue. After fighting civil war from 1960 to 1967, Nigeria should take a cue from Rwanda. Now, the state as it is now, the state is a corrupt state because the leaders are corrupt. You said we are going to be talking about roads just now, about tolling on federal government road. We are going to talk about corruption when we get to that state. But you see that in all aspects of our national life, the state, federal, and local level, the managers of the Nigeria state, they are like predators on the Nigerian people.
Okay.
That is, they are like animals that eat other animals. They see themselves as superhumans. When they have opportunity of leading, they exploit the people. It pains me that all Nigeria leaders, federal and state, and even local, even National Assembly level, they all have businesses abroad. There's a video that is being circulated now by one man who has been doing, he said he want to find out investment of leaders of certain countries who have taken their stolen wealth outside the country. And they have been working on Nigeria, some other country, the businesses of Vladimir Putin and other persons. And there's a documentary that he did on Nigeria that has been circulated on the internet, on the WhatsApp and the rest of them. What are we saying? That if Nigeria want to be like other countries where our leaders will steal our money and go and keep. Like if you go to America now, you have some states in America where Nigeria leaders, governors, House of Assembly members, senators, and the rest of them, they have investment, they have houses. Nobody will stay there, they just lock them. Anytime they travel, they go there to go and stay. That's corruption. But you don't see anywhere in Africa where a white man like Barack Obama or Bill Clinton will steal money of America to come and invest here or to come and keep the money here. So our leaders steal development from here, they steal our resources here and take the development and resources elsewhere. In the next 57 years or next 365 days, we are expecting a reversal of this so that the Nigeria state can actually deliver on the dividends of statehood.
Okay. All right.
Before I end that issue, we have problem of insecurity in the country now.
All right.
I expect all the governors, for example, they are receiving security vote, all the governors in Nigeria. I'm sure that there's no governor that is receiving less than 500 million as security vote in all the state of the federation, which is approved for them by the State House of Assembly in the process of presenting their budget. That money, the law says that you are not going to be asked to account for it. And I'm sure the makers of the law did it deliberately because they know that there are persons, centripetal forces that may not make the governor to perform well. So when the governor is there, he hears that at Esako West local government, there are some people who are threatening the interests of the government. The governor can invite them even if they are in opposition. To say, come, I hear that you are not happy with our government. What is the problem? It can be just you that don't have anything doing. You look for a way to engage them. Okay. We are going to constitute an unofficial committee. You will be helping police and the community to make sure that there is no insecurity issues here. On a monthly basis, we are going to be giving you something like this so that you will see yourself as part and parcel of the government. I'm not sure many governors, some may be doing it, I'm not sure many governors are doing it. And so, even when somebody is committing a crime, a youth is passing by, can even help himself to perpetrate the crime just because there is hunger. And if there's no government in the world that can say we are fighting insecurity by not first and foremost ensuring that there is food security, stomach infrastructure. Because when criminals are arrested, even though they say I'm doing it for the first time, I will not do it again. If they don't have means of survival, they know that in pidgin English they say die and die. They know that whether I die at home of hunger or I'm arrested and killed, put to prison and the rest of them, one day I will still die. Let me even look for something to eat and die. And so government at state, federal, and local level should address the problem of insecurity by first and foremost engaging the people, because you are not local government chairman of an atmosphere. You are a local government chairman of a community. You are not governor of an atmosphere. You are government of a state. You are not president of atmosphere. You are president of a country. Insecurity in any part of the country should be a concern to you. Okay. So that is the way I feel that the Nigeria state can be.
A lot of issues that you've mentioned, and I think they're spot on. But just quickly, before we go on this discussion, because we're gradually wrapping it up here, remember you can be a part of the discussion. Like I said, we want to hear from you. What do you think should be the next direction for Nigeria? Phone lines open, 052-290-573. We want to hear from you. Also, send an SMS or a WhatsApp message to the number 0811-929-2688. Get with us on Twitter also via Twitter handle at ITVRadioNG. Use the hashtag TMI when you tweet. Would love to know where you're sending your message from and your name. Plus, remember to keep your comments civil when you call in. I've got this message right here. Says, I want to thank the speaker, and I agree with him. If Nigeria must be free from all what's happening right now, we must practice true federalism. That really will help us. That's coming from Morris in Benin. Thank you so much, Morris, for your contribution. Keep them coming through also. All right, as we begin to wrap up right now, let's look at Nigeria and how good we've come. As much as there are a whole lot of issues to talk about, especially a whole lot of negative stuff, things we're not doing right. But I think we've also got to give ourselves credit. There are countries that have seen the kind of uprising and civil war and agitations that Nigeria has seen in the past 57 years, and they're no longer together. They're not even better off divided. Talk about Sudan and South Sudan. Talk about some other parts of the world. Talk about the Soviet Union. They're still battling with the issues as regards of the war they've had. Nigeria been able to keep it together, even if there are agitations from time to time. That's something to give credit to governments that's come on board. Don't you think so?
Well, when a man wakes up in the morning, he should be thankful to God that he's alive.
Okay. Yes.
What the day holds for him, he doesn't know.
All right.
So that's why Yoruba people used to say, let me speak Yoruba here. That is, there's no small journey. Your journey between one bus stop and another may be your last journey on earth. So that Nigeria is one country from independence to date. one can say, okay, thank God that we are one country. But when it comes to benefits from a country that you are citizen of, it's only the privileged few that can say that they are benefited. The masses of our people have not benefited. Now, we talk about Nigeria roads, for example. Our roads are death traps across the country. Then, we have the problem of wear and tear of the vehicle for the owner. And then, we have loss of revenue to the state or the government in terms of wastages on the road, maybe vehicle breaking down, people carrying goods and services from one part of the country to another, and then the thing will just get spoiled in the process, and so on. We expect Nigeria government to be alive to its responsibility of providing sustainable infrastructure. In 2004, the government of President Obasanjo said that he was removing toll gates from major federal roads. The reason he gave was that every year they were realizing about 800 million. And that was a far cry from what was actually
really coming in.
Yes. That the managers of the toll gates were appropriating the money.
Feeding forth.
Yes. He now said the toll gates should be removed. And they were removed. That was a gross mistake on the side of that government. Why did I say gross mistake? There are some roads in America where you have tolls. Brazil, Russia, China, virtually all major countries of the world.
Okay, could you just take a pause on this return of tolling on the roads, because we're going to discuss that in just a few minutes from now. Let's just stay within the confines of Nigeria at 57. What's next? And I mentioned the issue of the fact that there are countries that has not seen half of what Nigeria has seen, and they're divided already. Nigeria's been through a lot, and we're still together. I wanted to get your comment on that, basically, and then we'll switch on to the next discussion, because someone will be joining us.
Nigeria is not one. Nigeria is not one. We are only pretending to be one.
You think Nigeria is not one?
Yes, I will give reasons now.
Okay,
I will give reasons. The reasons I'm going to give, they are well documented in literature.
In about a minute or two.
Okay. I see former military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, talking about Nigeria being one country, that they fought for Nigeria to remain one, and Nigeria has been one. And he has been begging Nigeria leaders, giving them an assignment that they should keep Nigeria one. My whole question is this: is Nigeria really one after the civil war? Because I said something about Rwanda just now. I said that Rwanda fought a war, the second civil war, genocidal civil war, fratricidal civil war. Now about 1 million people were killed, and their bodies are embalmed in one museums across the country. If you go to Kigali, you go to Gitarama, go to other parts, you see human beings that are dried with chemicals as reference point for the country not to ever go back to another war. Now, the government are back on reconciliation. I said the government are back on what we call post-conflict state reconstruction. Nigeria fought a civil war. From that time till now, has there been any deliberate action of government to reconstruct the state after the war, so that issues that led to the war will never again resurface in the history of Nigeria? The answer is no. You talk about Sudan. It's not only Sudan. There are other countries, even neighboring Cameroon. The people, the Anglophone part of Cameroon, they are clamoring for breakaway. Why? Because the government at the center is marginalizing them. And they have, even in Spain, Spain was one of the most powerful countries of the world during colonial administration, and they even colonize some countries. Now we have the Catalonians in Spain saying they want to break away. They want a country of their own. Is it Yugoslavia or is it Russia you made mention of? The reason is because, one, those who are managers of the state, they play what we call politics of exclusion. And you cannot continue to play politics of exclusion and expect to have peace. So I expect that in the next 1 year or in the next 2 years, the agitation that we are seeing in Nigeria, whether southeast, whether south-south, whether Midwest, because I see Midwesterners saying now that Nigeria, Midwest was the fourth region, and is the most marginalized region. That it's now time for them to come out and say no to exclusion of Midwestern state or the Midwestern region from the mainstream policies of Nigeria.
Okay.
So Nigeria should learn from the recommendation that were made by United States Intelligence Agency that says that, and the World Bank in their 2005 study of certain countries, assessment of certain countries, that these countries were going to face problem of disintegration and crisis from 2015. Some did not wait 2015 before they started their own. Sudan is one of them, whether North Sudan or South Sudan.
Yeah.
Syria is one of them. Iraq is one of them. And several other countries. So if Nigeria do not want to follow the path of these countries, Nigeria leaders should sit down now and renegotiate the future of this country.
All right, so I'm going to say thank you very much, Neville Obakedo, for all of the expose on this one. But definitely, you're still on set with me because we're going to be moving on to some other discussion in a very short while. We'll take a pause. Meanwhile, we'll just keep hoping and praying that the leaders and those in places of authority are listening, to all of these clamors, all of these cries, all of these talks, especially as it has to do with true federalism, because that's the only way some sections, some parts wouldn't feel marginalized. If there's true federalism, every state can take care of its citizens. Every state is able to generate revenue enough to run. Every state is able, to cater for its own. Then there wouldn't be the issue of we're being left out. It would now be an issue of our governors are not doing what they are supposed to do. And then at that point, persons closer to the people can be held responsible. We hope all of this taken care of. And then in the next 1 year, Nigeria, looks back at our 57th year, we're able to say, okay, 57 years wasn't what we hoped for. It wasn't the best of it, but we've been able to make this out of turning 57 by the time we're turning 58. We'll take a short pause right now. I bring Honorable Friday Ogiraki to join us on set as we move on to look at the proposal for the return of tolling on federal roads. Do stay with us.
Papa, lay your hands on me. Joy. Now you are put to my trust.
Papa, lay your hands on me. Make a dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make a dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make a dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make a dey blow. If you know me before, you're not gonna be again. From a little beginning to a better tomorrow. This year, it don't make a way for me. Papa, lay your hands on me. I need your prayer, Papa. I need your anointing, Papa. I need your blessing, Papa. To go with life, lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Make I blow. Lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Make I blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. If you know me before, you're not gonna be again. From a little beginning to a better tomorrow. This year, it don't make a way for me. Papa, lay your hands on me.
I thank you, Lord, for your blessings and your grace. Jai. Thank you, Jehovah, for your love on Calvary. Boom. So everybody make us stand fit. Give all the thanks and praise to Jehovah. Cause he dey bless me and you every day. Then today I'm in on the faith. Jai. Papa, lay your hands on me. Jai. Holy Sabini, now you are put to my trust. Oh, Jai.
I need your prayer, Papa. I need your anointing, Papa. I need your blessing, Papa. To go with life, lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Lay your hands here, Papa. Make I blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. Papa, lay your hands on me. Make I dey blow. Papa, lay
once again, I think that song is kind of apt, for the time. We need a hand of God on Nigeria right now. So as we turn, by the time we're turning 58, we should be able to look back and say, okay, the hand of God has always been, and maybe came down more upon our country, and we can see the effect of the hand of God, because we need things to turn around, literally blow, turn around for the better, turn around for the positive. That's what we're talking about. All right, it's about time for us to move on to our next discussion right now. I've still got Neville Obakedu with me, and joining me on this side is Honorable Friday Oyeraki, former member of the Edo State House of Assembly, a legal practitioner, and public affairs cum political analyst, joining me this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, let's just move on. Look at the reintroduction of tolling on federal roads. Now, if you remember very well, back in 2015, when this administration came on board and the ministers were appointed, one of the first things the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, that's talking about Babatunde Raji Fashola, said was that there were already plans to reintroduce tolling on federal roads, and it means that a whole lot of people would get jobs. Now that's as regards the empowerment part, but also reasons why tolling was removed from federal roads way back in 2004-2005 by the Olusegun Obasanjo administration was simply because the monies coming in were not being properly accounted for. It felt like those managing the toll gates were getting richer while the roads were suffering, because the monies were meant to maintain the federal roads, and paltry sums were coming in. I mean, you can imagine when tolls are collected on a daily basis, on roads. You drive through, you pay, you drive past, you pay. And at the end of the year, somebody says 800 million across Nigeria, as huge as the country is. It's, totally shocking. And so we're looking at, reintroducing tolling on the federal roads. Is that the right way to go right now? Let me start from Honorable Friday Oyeraki. Reintroducing tolling on federal roads, is that the right way to go right now?
In fact, that statement or policy trust is one that should not even be debated. It should be a given. It should be something that we ought to take for granted, because we have always had it until a certain administration came, and that was the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, who, for very spurious reason, the fact that you are saying that what the tolls or the revenue that was coming from that aspect of the Nigerian economy was inadequate does not in any way justify the total removal, as it were. The total removal or eradication of tolling on our federal roads, knowing, of course, the relevance of that to the economy. So that is why I said it ought to be a given. But the question may be asked, on which road now would they now establish this toll gate, as it were? Because all the roads are in deplorable situation. I don't think any motorist, as it were, as we speak today in Nigeria, would gladly and willingly pay any toll for a road as bad as the one you have in the Benin Auchi Road, or the Benin Abraka Road, or the now very proverbial East-West Road. All the roads in the country are in shambles. They are in deplorable condition. So I think perhaps that is what is even putting the present administration in a phase. Because what moral justification do you now have when you have not done the road? And what time do they have now? For an administration that came in almost over 2 years now, as it were, to power, you are still theorizing on whether to introduce something as basic as a toll gate. I'm not entirely surprised that this thing is coming from former governor Fashola, because he actually did that. He did that while he was a governor in Lagos.
Yeah, the Lekki
on some of the road.
Yeah.
So if they are still at the realms of rhetoric, at the realms of theorizing, as it were, I think it's rather late in time. Because the earlier they have started, the better it will have been for Nigeria and for all of us. Because if you look at the enormous potentials that the toll gate system have, the very positive impact it will make on the economy. In fact, it's from day one you will even start. For every road you are willing to do, either solely or in partnership with certain reputable company, road construction company, you should be you ought to have that as part of the original blueprint. For every road you are going to do, either you say okay, build, operate, and transfer, or if we are going to partner with you, a person passenger will go to you that is going to do the road, other passenger will come to us. These are models already very, very copiously experimented upon, and they are working in some other clients. But I tell you, the real reason why somebody with lassity, as it were, you know, not take it seriously, as to have made it a day one project, or why somebody again at a particular time, you know, dismantle the toll gate, is this issue of our over dependence on oil. Oil will always bring money. That's why somebody, like I said, will take that irresponsible act, that insensitive action, you know, without minding the fact that you were going to throw a number of Nigerian people
out of job.
Without realizing that even that 800,000 will also do 800 million, as it were. You can only improve on it. But like they did to the toll gate, you also find that so many others, parastatals of government that were income yielding, revenue yielding, like the Nigeria Railway, where is it today? Nigeria Railway is just about now that they are jump-starting it all over. So what we are saying is that if not for the fact that we like as a country, we have been so spoiled by oil money and oil revenue, the issue of tolling on our road ought to be a number one priority in the consideration of how to revive the Nigeria economy, how to create employment, and even socially.
Okay.
For the social, it also has a social implication and even security implication. When you drive all of that stretch of road, for instance, from Benin to Lagos, or from Benin to Abuja, without, you know, perhaps at the wee hours or midnight, you know, and you don't have a place where you can meet with some human element, you know, it further puts our security on the highways in jeopardy. So I will be thinking now that they are talking about reintroducing, it should come with some other paraphernalias.
Okay.
It should come with issues like sick bay, security post, police post, as it were, not just an outlet for only revenue collection, but an outlet where people can also seek succor. In the event of road accident, in the event of robbery or theft or other kind of criminalities on the highway, you should be rest assured that, oh, when I get to the next toll gate, I will be able to get help. So that should form part of the.
Let me hold you a little bit. Neville, you've been pushing to say a whole lot as regards, you know, this reintroduction of tolling on federal roads. So let's get a little bit of your take on this one.
Is he really pushing? You are the one who told me we are going to discuss it.
I said we. He tried coming on it. So let's get all of that.
Well,
to say. Yeah.
I will start by saying that one way that government can get revenue is by taxation.
Okay.
And tolling on our road is like a form of tax or taxation. Now, before the advent of this government, the APC-led government of President Muhammadu Buhari, there was a government of President Goodluck Ebele Azikiwe Jonathan. Okay. In the last lap of his administration, he appointed an indigene of Edo State, a son of the soil, by name architect Mike Onolememe as Minister for Works. And from 2013 to 2015, before the government was self-packing, Architect Onolememe had repeatedly told Nigerians that the Ministry for Works was always shortchanged in terms of the money that is given to the ministry to carry out its duties in terms of construction and maintenance of roads.
Okay.
The worst of all was the 2015 budget, where the ministry proposed 100 billion for construction and maintenance of roads in Nigeria, and the National Assembly sliced it to 11 billion. And the 11 billion was meant for 210 roads, federal roads, to be constructed out of the 36,000 kilometers of road that belong to federal government. So from 2013 to 2015, the PDP-led government of Jonathan was always clamoring for reintroduction of tolls on federal roads. But they were not able. Maybe if they had won 2015 election, they would have been able to do that. And so directors and persons who were in the Federal Ministry of Housing already had documents to show that there was need for reintroduction of the tolls.
Okay.
And so when Fashola, former governor of Lagos State, who himself is an architect or
is a believer in
yes,
tolling,
he's a believer in establishment of tolls for generation of revenue and maintenance of road. He just made the document here and decided when he was the first press briefing that he did, he said the ministry will not be able to tie roads, maintain roads with allocation from government. That for Nigeria government to fix all the roads in Nigeria, they need like 2 trillion naira, and government cannot get it. So the ministry was proposing reintroduction of tolls. Now, I said before now that in almost all the countries of the world that we know that our people travel to, they collect tolls from federal roads, even some from state roads. If you go to India, there are federal roads in India that they collect tolls. There are state roads in India that they collect tolls. If you go to Bangladesh, for example, since 1978, they have been collecting tolls on their federal roads. If you go to Russia, they collect tolls. If you go to America, if you go to Japan, if you go to China, across this country, if you go to South Africa, Mozambique in Africa here, they collect tolls. Even Cameroon, they collect tolls on roads. But the issue for Nigeria here now is not that they are going to build to reintroduce the tolls on federal roads. History not going to repeat itself, because the reason why Obasanjo just said they are going to remove the tolls and now raise the pump price of petroleum products for the maintenance of the road was because of corruption. That's the corruption that he talked about. In the pump price, in the increment of pump price of petroleum product, the corruption left tolls on the express road and came to the product issue. And so there's no aspect of our national life where you don't have corruption. So my suggestion is that, first and foremost, before any government can outright what a previous government did, the government should first of all ask itself, this policy of this government now, is it operational elsewhere in another country? If yes, what are the things that is making that policy to be successful, so that we can bring it here and apply it, instead of saying, okay, remove all the tolls. What they use a lot of money to put in place, they also use a lot of money to destroy them. And now we are going back again. This is what we call a free-flow policy or somersault policy. Yes, and so on and so forth. Okay. So what the government should do now, like what is happening in Lagos, like that Lekki Ekpe concession, government should take it. And thank God that the governor who brought that project to Lagos is the one that is the minister now.
Yeah. For 2 years
issue.
About 2 years running.
Well, don't you also think?
Wait, let me just quickly react to what you say, because you know he's a legal practitioner, and we have known for years. I know what he stands. We stand for the truth. So I greet you, sir.
Thank you.
But when you are talking about action of government and inaction of government, you should also always look at the legal framework. The government could not just wake up and say we are introducing roads. Somebody like himself, even an ordinary person can just go to court and challenge and say, stop this thing that you want to do. So the government of APC now, under the leadership of President Buhari, needed a legal framework.
So are you
saying
there's a legal
whether I'm the mouthpiece, whether I'm
there's a legal framework?
Yes, then I'm coming to that. That's why I say it's very okay. We have a National Assembly here. Like people are clamoring for secession. People are clamoring for restructuring. And the president, you see, the president broadcast is saying Nigeria should pass all the agitation through the National Assembly.
Channels,
Yes, that is the legal framework that we are talking about now for expressing your agitation. So the National Assembly, the Senate, in October 2016, which was last year, about a year now.
This issue of
they passed a resolution empowering the Federal Ministry of Works, which is Fashola is managing 3 ministries put together now. The resolution empowered the Federal Ministry of Works to reintroduce tours on federal roads.
That is superfluous. They don't need any special legislation. I'm a lawyer. You have said so.
Yes, so I'm saying that
they don't need any special legislation. It is within the constitutional responsibility of the executive. All of those roads designated as federal roads are within the exclusive powers and responsibility of the federal government. The federal government, the executive arm of the federal government. So there is no justification. That's why I asked my friend if he was going to be the mouthpiece of Mr. Fashola, and I'm sure he wouldn't want to do that because I don't know if he's paying you for that. Because you see, there's a limit to this theorizing that we are used to in this country. Don't continue to buffet me with the mere promise of reintroducing something that I know is so basic and so simple. In fact, I believe that road construction, is one of the simplest obligations that the government owes to the people. Because you don't need any special expertise. What you need to do is that commitment and the political will. If you find it intolerable that people should not be agonized while traveling our road, then you must be able to put it as a matter of priority in your budget. That's the simple economy that we all know. There are competing demands and needs, even for our needs as well as for government. And I know that road movement of goods, persons, and services is critical to economic survival. So why don't you put money, hire person that can do road for Nigerians? Even in the colonial era, you find that some of the roads that they did at that time have lived that period to this time, and this government that we call self-government do not think that Nigerians need good road.
All right.
When they go to other countries,
let me hold you a little bit. Let me hold you a little bit because we need to take a pause right now. But just when we come back, we'll quickly look at the fact that don't you think tolling on Nigerian roads would mean multiple taxation for the Nigerian on the street? We'll look at that when we return from this pause. So stay tuned.
Richard didn't want to die, but he couldn't stop himself. The collision with the car didn't kill him, but he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he continued on his journey. When he hit the inside of the car, that didn't kill him either. But his internal organs carried on travelling until they hit his rib cage, and his lungs were punctured, and the main artery from his heart was torn. And that's what killed Richard.
All right, thank you for joining me. It's the concluding part of This Morning on ITV. Quickly, let's wrap it up on our discussion focusing on the proposal for the return of tolling on federal ways. Still got Neville Obakedu with me. He's a public affairs analyst and a member of the academic environment. He's a lecturer at that. And Honorable Friday Ogiraki still with me in the studio, former member of the Edo State House of Assembly and legal practitioner. Just quickly, as we wrap up right now, one of the issues that is being raised, when the talk about returning tolling to the federal ways is the issue of multiple taxation. And like you mentioned, tolling was removed, and then the price of fuel was jacked up to make for the taking care of roads, make for maintenance of roads from oil revenue. But we're returning toll into the roads as proposed by the minister. The Senate already has said it should be done. And would this not amount to multiple taxation? Because people are paying for road maintenance from fuel products, and they're also going to pay tolling on the roads. Let me come to you quickly, Barrister Friday.
I don't think that argument is tenable.
Okay.
Because we have always seen increment in fuel pump price.
But we know part of the price of fuel has to do with maintenance of roads.
Well, what I'm telling you that when they tell you they want to increase fuel pump price for the purpose of raising money to maintain roads, you know that is just mere platitude.
Okay.
It's just mere rhetoric, as it were.
All right.
Because we have not seen roads being maintained, even after they increase the fuel pump price.
So what's the probability that return
Oil
of tolling
price today
would
is
maintain the
at
road?
all-time high as far as domestic consumption is concerned. The reason for increment of oil pump price, they have not told you the honest truth about it.
Okay.
It is not because they wanted to dismantle the toll gate, as it were.
Okay.
It was not because they want to now put they want to streamline the taxation system so that those you pay in one first swoop when you are buying fuel. That wasn't the reason.
Okay.
In fact, if you investigate why they removed the toll system in this country, you will be amazed that it was for mere selfish reason, not even in the national interest. So I'm telling you that tolling is a special tax. So
wouldn't it be abused again?
It will not. That is where the responsibility of government comes. As you speak, when you go to Nigeria, airports in Nigeria, you pay tolls before you can access them.
True.
If you have bought fuel at the filling station, they are telling you that it is because they want to remove double taxation. Why are you not paying tolls when you access some airports in this country?
Okay.
Why are you paying tolls in Lagos Road or some internal roads in Lagos State? Is that not double taxation? So I'm just telling you that the argument is illogical.
Okay.
Those who are advancing that argument should drop it.
Okay.
Tolling is very, very essential.
Okay.
It's a viable source of revenue for the public and for the government, so as to ensure that government can have alternative sources of money to carry out some basic function. Like I mentioned before, and I will say it again before I close this submission, is the fact that we have been spoiled by oil money. We always believe that it's available, oil money is available. We can kill the other areas where money would ordinarily have come. That is why somebody woke up from the bad side of his bed, supposedly, and dismantled toll gate. And like my friend mentioned, at a cost even more than what was used to build the toll gate in the first place.
All right.
So that is the point.
Let me hold you, Barrister Friday. Quickly, Neville, let's come to you. Don't you think this amounts to multiple taxation?
Before I talk about multiple taxation, Comrade was saying that whether I was the spokesman for Fashola at that time, and I said what I was trying to let viewers know is that the issue of reintroduction of toll gates across Nigeria was in line with the resolution that was passed by the Senate. Okay. I was not the one, and anybody can check for the information. Right. That's by the way. Now talking about multiple taxation. Nigerians are victims of multiple taxation, all kinds of taxation. But as he said, there's a special tax that people pay across the world, whether in America, where they pay. The Americans pay tax. Is their economies that are America, UK, other countries, their economies that are driven by taxation. And yet they still pay road tolls to government. This is a special tax, which has to do with the maintenance of the facilities that you are using at that particular time.
You sound like even if it's multiple taxation, we're used to it as Nigerians, but this is special and it's important.
Yes, very, very important.
So that we're used to multiple taxation, we bear it and keep.
Not necessarily bearing it.
This one cannot be categorized as multiple taxation.
Because I have to pay tax here, and somewhere else this money is still being
collected.
collected.
It's payment for using the road.
Road is the particular facility that you are using that you are paying for.
If you are just walking like a pedestrian, you are not made to pay.
Yes.
But if you are a motorist,
that you
categories of
map pressure, your vehicle is multi pressure, yes, or you pay higher.
You attract more money, more tax, as it were. So it's for road usage.
Yes.
Okay. So we all have an agreement here that the return of toll on federal roads is apt and
very positive,
very much needed.
And they should worry about it. It's not
there should be transparency and accountability.
No theorizing. Let people go back to work.
Okay.
A lot of people that were sacked who have now become
about
distribution.
22,000.
A lot of them have even traveled to Europe.
Or some of them are
They have
even
through
late.
the desert.
Some of them are even late.
Are even late because they cannot meet with their. You just wake up in the morning and throw a lot of Nigerians to the job market. You know, that is insensitivity of the highest order.
No.
And I believe that is one act, if they want to even introduce, they should investigate what happened.
Okay.
Should be investigated thoroughly. That is where you begin to fight corruption. Nigeria will believe in you.
Okay.
Not when you start chasing after one woman here and there for political reasons. The woman said, I want to come to Nigeria, and they said she cannot come.
Let's just halt this here because of time. We've got to do another quick interview. In the meantime, thank you so much, Neville Obakedo, for coming through this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, Honorable Friday Ogiraki,
It's a
for
pleasure
the
once
time
again.
this morning. And that's much we can do on this discussion. But do remember, like I'd say all the time, the discussion continues on our social media platform. Join us on Twitter at ITV Radio NG. Share your thoughts on the proposal for the return of tolling on federal roads, and also on our earlier discussion, Nigeria at 57. What do you expect next for our country? Thanks a whole lot.
This is ITV. Certainly the best.